Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm Michael Petro, and joining me on the show this week for an impromptu interview is Dean Goodine, property master out of British Columbia, Canada. Dean was gracious enough to accept my very last-minute email about coming on the show this weekend and to sit down and talk about what it takes to become a property master, how he got into it, what they do, how they make all the fun things we all want to hang on our walls. His career, his trajectory, some of the sets he's worked on. He's worked on a Nolan set. It's true, there are no chairs. He worked on Inception. He's also worked on the likes of The Incredible Hulk, C on Apple. He's done a lot of period pieces, a lot of Westerns. The guy's been in the industry for 36 years. So we talk about the inception of his career, pun intended, and then specifically get into the tragic accidental shooting of Hylana Hutchins in the Rust production set in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's kind of taken over all of the news the last 3 days. This is not something of a scoop. This was just me wanting to talk to a person who knew stuff about a situation that was very sad and tragic, and everybody feels horrible about in this community. So this is just getting a professional's opinion on the matter and having a great time doing so. Dean's such a great person to talk to, and I implore you to go check out his work. His IMDb tab will be in the show notes. So that's who's on the show. That's what's on the show for you this week, ladies and gentlemen. Updates, housekeeping, website's almost finalized. That'll be probably in the next couple weeks. We'll still keep talking about it because we know you're all just waiting for bated breath for the fourth iteration of a website that should have never been more than one. Whatever. The point is, it's almost done. Second to that, if you want to see us perform live and if you want to meet us in person, if you're from Winnipeg and the surrounding area, we will be at Comic-Con October 29th, 30th, and 31st. We'll be hanging out, most of it, but specifically doing a live panel performance, 1 p.m. October 30th. That's in the afternoon. We'll keep you posted. Follow us on social media for all that stuff. We're going to do a live debate for you. Truth be told, we'd love to tell you, but that would ruin the surprise. So just show up. Be nice, be kind. This is our first performance as a podcast. We're not ashamed to admit that. So who knows what can happen, but I wouldn't bring anybody under the age of 16. That's all I'm going to say. So to all you parents out there, if you don't have anybody over the age of 16, don't bring them to the show. We are a little potty mouth from time to time. Anyways, so that's our housekeeping for you, ladies and gentlemen. I am not doing this from my computer right now, so I don't have the top 10. I'll have that later in the week, so sorry to everybody for that. This was so last minute. Figured out how to do it. We just wanted to get it recorded. So yeah, that's really all there is. If you like the show and you want to support us after this, if this is your first time, thank you so much for pressing play. Check the show notes. You can donate to our debater cause, help us with our masturbation problem, or buy some merch. We've got a prop shop. We've got all our merch in there. We got a bunch of different things that we sell. So click on those show notes if you like what you hear, or just follow us. Subscribe in your podcast player. It's the easiest way to do so. It's cheap and it's free as well, and that's really what we care about the most. The rest of the stuff's just there for you guys. Besides that, I have nothing else for you. I really enjoyed talking to Dean. I hope you enjoy listening to him. I know you will. He's got some fucking crazy stories. I will cue the reel, and you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everybody, to the official space section of the charter.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Sir, you're out of order. Out of order? I show you out of order!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Real Debaters production. It's just me, your humble narrator, Michael Petro, this week, but I've got a very special guest for you. His name is Dean Goodine, and he is a property master in the world of film, and he has got a resume. And the reason I wanted to talk to him specifically was because of what's been going on in the last 3 to 5 days with what happened with Rust and Hylana. Is that how we pronounce her name? I haven't had anybody confirm that yet. Is that right, Dean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in asking those questions and finding out that and talking to somebody who's got a ton of experience in it, we can't get to that until we get to know who Dean is. So first of all, Dean, thank you for accepting my email and coming on the show.
Yeah, I wish it was under other circumstances. I love my craft. I love talking about it whenever an opportunity presents itself. But sometimes the spotlight is shone upon our craft for all the wrong reasons. And that's why we're here today.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going to be a somber conversation. So we'll get there. But I don't know you, and you're actually the first person who I've had really no correspondence with. So I'm very interested in our conversation just from that perspective, because everybody knows I don't cheat, right? I'm like, yeah, no, I know this guy. We have a friendship or a working relationship, but me and you are complete strangers. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's start at the beginning of Dean's film career. Where were you when you started to get into it? How did that happen?
Well, it's like anything, any of us who work in the arts, it happens when you're a teenager. You start thinking that you want to work in my case, I wanted to work in broadcasting and media. And this happened when I was like 13, 14 years old in New Brunswick. And I ended up in Alberta in the oil field boom of the 80s, working in the oil patch, had a really good job. And one of my good friends who had known me and knew I had all those dreams and desires pulled me aside one day because he knew I was at a life determining moment. I was either going to be in the oil fields for the rest of my life or I had to get out. And he looked at me and said, "Is this life you want? Or are you going to follow that dream you had?" So I immediately applied to the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology in Calgary in their cinema, television, stage, and radio course, and found myself in radio. And in 1986, I was DJing in a bar, and a bunch of my classmates came in and said, "Hey, we need a set dresser tomorrow on our TV show, a little show called Hamilton's Quest for CTV. Do you want to come and help us?" And I said, "Hey, will I be done in time to come back and do my nighttime DJ gig?" And they said, "Yes." So I walked. They said, "You have to go to this address. We're meeting at this address." So I walked 2 blocks. I was lucky. I didn't have a car. I only had to walk 2 blocks to this house. And I knock on the door, and this pretty woman answered the door. And she said, "Oh, everybody's in the studio on the side of the house." The very first person I met on my very first paying film job is my wife, Janice. I mean, how serendipitous is that moment?
Oh, I want to call you John Cusack.
Yeah, we've been together ever since.
You win right now. You win for best film story. Everybody's got the same, and it all starts the same. Someone called me and thought, "Hey, I'd be good," and then they learn their craft. But you learned how to fall in love with your wife.
Yeah, like it wasn't love at first sight. It happened, but the interesting thing about it is 3 days into that job, I turned to one of my classmates. We had a 1 ton full of set dressing we were taking somewhere, and I looked at him and I said, "Man, this is kind of fun, but I'd hate to do this for a living." And that was like, I calculated in the book I've written that was over like 1,800 days ago or something of film work. Wow. I don't know, some crazy number, and I'm still here 36 years later or 30. Yeah, it was just, it's crazy to think that, and it's gone really fast. That's the other thing is, you think you're never going to advance your career, and all of a sudden you've written a book and you're looking back on the life you've had.
Yeah, I would imagine, and being at gig based, right? Like if you nail 3 or 4 jobs a year, that's going to make that year speed up exponentially. And you probably look back on life through productions, through shoots, right? Because you can measure 3 months here, 21 days there. So the span of 36 years for you must feel like the Flash.
Yeah, my wife says I have an incredible memory because that's how I remember things. I equate any event that's going on to the show I was standing on when that event happened. And so it is a gig economy. And to have a career that has gone 36 years before all the new media came on board with all these shows now, this was back in the days of the CBS movie of the week, where you did commercials, or you did commercials for the brick, or in my case, you ended up doing stuff for the Olympics in 1988 in Calgary, and you just kind of worked your way through. But it wasn't uncommon to go 3-4 months without a phone call. And at that moment, you're thinking to yourself, can I stay in this industry? Can I really do this? And I know that my wife and I had some pretty lean times, but we always managed at the 11th hour when things would look like they were at their bleakest. It was like, are we going to split the dog food with the dog? Like, what are we doing here? The phone would ring. Miraculously, it always rang when it needed to. I can't speak to why that happened, but it happened. And so we were always lucky, and we always had this funny thing going on. Whenever we got a job, after 2 or 3 months, we put on Peter Gabriel's Big Time from his So album and play it. As crazy as that sounds.
No.
But it was just a little own personal celebration that we could go from, having hot dogs and splitting dog food with the dog to, hey, we're going to order a steak tonight. And it really was that simple back then, of trying to survive in your craft, because you truly had to love it to be able to live it. And it was really it was a tough time, but it's paid off so much over the years.
What did your wife do? Do you guys do the same thing, or was she in a different department?
She's a set decorator. She's retired now. So when I met her, she was an assistant decorator. So what would happen is we would get a commercial and we would work together. She would sometimes be my boss. Sometimes I'd be her boss. And the term boss is not a term you really use in film anyway. We just worked together. We just took on different responsibilities. I would do the props and she would do the sets. And,
wow, what a team. That's
yeah.
You set them up, I knock them down. That's literally the definition of it right there.
Yeah.
So is set dresser the starting position for property master, would you say? Like, is that how the trajectory would work? Or like, because you got a phone call, you showed up, you did a show, you meet the love of your life, you have this perfect story. How does your career go then from set dresser?
Yeah, well, what happened there is it's another scenario. I ended up dropping out of school the second year because I just kept getting phone calls for work. And I remember going to one of my instructors, who was a lovely woman named Kay Grieve, who's passed away. And I said, what do I do? She said, our job is to prepare you for an industry. You are getting called by an industry now. You can always come back and get your diploma later. So I ended up taking in educational television. It was all contract work, but there was a series for Access Television about the law. And basically you had to build the set, you had to dress the set, and then you had to do props. And so Jan had a really good friend who wanted to get into set dressing. Her name was Linda Williams. She's passed away. She was lovely. And so I said, well, okay, I'll hire Linda. I'll split the contract fee with her and she can come and help me. And Linda, she was like a highly caffeinated roadrunner who could talk to a trucker and make them blush, just to give you a sense of her personality.
Got it.
So I said to Linda, come to the house at 8 a.m. tomorrow and we'll go over the plans and we'll go for the day. She showed up at 7:15, cigarette hanging out of her mouth and a coffee vibrating. And I said, didn't I tell you 8 o'clock? She goes, no, I'm really excited. I said, well, I can tell. I was in my house coat. So we got to the set and we started getting the set ready. And I was putting a piece of dressing in the kitchen and she looked at me in Linda speak, which I won't say on a.
Oh, no. Feel free. I want quoted. Give it to me.
Yeah. She said, that I'm not going to give you the full word because I can't. I have a hard time swearing.
Okay, fair enough.
She said that effing thing would not be in the kitchen. And I looked at her and said, it's my set. She goes, I know, but you have bad taste. And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you dress the set and I'll build it and I'll do the props.
Okay.
And I didn't realize at that moment, I'm turning all my notifications off.
Yeah,
here.
sure.
I didn't realize at that moment I became a prop master. Because she took that all away from me. And so, yeah, it all started there in a moment of me putting the wrong thing on a set and being told, yeah, you can't. So the natural progression for prop masters or prop people in general, there are 4 ways into the prop department that I've seen in my career.
Sure.
There are 4 ways into props. The first is that people come from a theater background. They work props in theater and suddenly a little commercial comes to town, they start migrating or moving into television and film, or they move in through the family business. And it's not a bad thing. A lot of prop masters' children become prop masters. I know a couple of them that are really great prop masters and their parents were great prop masters. And that happens because they're sitting at the table helping dad build a prop every Saturday and Sunday when they're kids. And so it's just a natural progression in the business. Then there's the tactical prop masters. They come out of the military or they come out of the police and they're more weapons oriented when they start their career and then they start to learn the rest of the craft. And so there's that group that have come in as well. And then there's the accidental prop master, which is me, who just through a series of very fortunate events stumbled into the department and worked my way through with some wonderful mentors along the way. So it's really I see 4 entry points. And the entry level job in props is just usually a prop assistant, and you're on the set. You're not given a whole lot of great responsibility, because I call them the Irish setter years. It's like chasing the tennis ball. I'm just happy to be here. I'll do anything. I don't know what I'm doing, but just throw the ball to me and I'll do it. So that's kind of the progression that I've seen in my career.
Did you have a skill set that you could fall back on? Because you're creating a thing, and this is from just a cinephile layman over here, so I love being corrected, so I get to know stuff. But you're part of the world building, right? The production design, the props, the things that are tactile that we see, that the actors touch, that will be called out if are incorrect. Like, there is a level of responsibility that I feel as much as a director has or a costumer has, but I feel with you guys, that's where all us nerds go, no, that's not right. So did you have were you a builder? Did you tinker? Like, where did your skill set come from? Or were you just trained by some amazing people and you're ready to go and you can pick it up?
Well, first of all, I'm not a builder, because some of the props I built in a hurry on a set usually involve my assistant looking at it going, you're not putting that on camera, are you? And I would say, well, the camera's 200 feet away on a crane. It's night and the boat's on fire. And the person will go, yeah, I know, but you're not going to put that on camera, are you? So I would not profess to be a builder. I'm a voracious researcher. I'm a real fan of history. I want to know about a subject in a script. So I want to tear back the fabric of what's going on in that story. I want to go deep. I want to offer things to the director that they might not have known. So I'm voracious that way. Working in the oil fields, I'm a good problem solver. There are many times you were in the middle of nowhere and something was broken, and you'd have to stand there and think, how am I going to fix this with my MacGyver tools in the back of my truck or whatever. So I always had a knack for thinking out a problem and solving it very quickly. And when you're on a set, a lot of times you're standing there and something's gone awry, and you have to be calm and you have to solve that problem. So I think that the strength that I had was I'm a good problem solver. I have a love of history and a thirst for knowledge. I want to learn every time. I never take anything for granted. And I'm also really good at hiring people. I hire wonderful crews. I'm an old hockey player. I believe a crew is like a hockey team, and you can't have all, power forwards in the same position. You have to have somebody who's good at defense. You have to have a good goalie. So when I put my crew together, I have people very specifically tasked in those roles. They can cross over and help in all other aspects, but the foundation is set that we are a team. We operate as a team. And that's how I've been successful for all this time.
I dig that, because I always tell myself every time I get to talk to one of you guys, I'm like, when are we going to talk about the team aspect? Because it's this, like, you guys are all in the same mindset where you're like, I am not an island. I need other people around me. I need people who can balance the workload. And I love hearing it. It's like this, it's just this consistent through line. If you're gonna,
every show that I've done the last 5 years, all these big fantasy shows and stuff, I stand there at points in time and look at all the people that are working with me on my team, and I go, I think I'm the least talented person in the room.
No, I've heard that before. Like all these, the billionaires and the corporate leaders, and they all say hire people smarter than you, so that
absolutely. I have no ego. I am not afraid when somebody comes up with a great idea. And I always tell my people, if they come up with a great idea, I let them tell the director. I give them the credit. I don't take the credit. I always just say, I hired them. That's the credit I need. But listen to this person.
I mean, I thought there was a good human on the other side of your Facebook posts there, but now I can confirm it definitely is so. That's so nice to hear. Because ego in any endeavor. My limited time on this earth, but like ego in any endeavor is usually it's the first thing that'll get you into trouble.
And we're living in the ego industry. I mean, it's like you have to have inner self-confidence, but it shouldn't be mistaken for ego. I think the inner self-confidence is the ability to be calm, quiet and thoughtful in a tough situation. A great prop master friend of mine who passed away a few years ago said to me, he said, you know, it's not how you perform when it's going well. It's how you solve the problem when it's going poorly that really defines you.
Touche. Totally. Yeah. I like, in my professional field, I'm the kind of person I'm like, okay, how do we solve and how do we move forward? Right. That's my focus. I don't like the blame shifting in the under the busing, so to speak. So,
and I should say, let me say the person's
yeah.
name that said that, Steve George. You know, I feel like if I'm going to quote somebody who's no longer with us, I need to say his name.
Yeah, no, I would love to learn more about this gentleman. Was he? You've mentioned this so far, and I want to touch on it. Is there a lot of mentorship in the property department? I feel like if you wanted to be a camera operator, you buy the gear and you learn it. It's very technical, but in props and in world building and in problem solving, there's probably people whose shoulders you've got to stand on to get where you're going, and it sounds like there's some very special people in your life. At what points were you meeting these people? How did they come into your life?
Well, it's living in a small film center like Calgary and being one of the only prop people at the time. If an American show came in, John Frankenheimer brought in a movie called Dead Bang in 1988. And it was really my first step on to Hollywood film in the prop department. And the prop master was a gentleman named Ray Mercer. And Ray was he's a wonderful man to begin with. And he was a great teacher. And he really understood my love of being there, but he also would temper it with, you know, don't run. It just makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. You know, slow down. And he said, if you ever become an actor, make sure if you're shot, you die in a doorway because you'll always get another day of work. You know, he was just such a wonderful wealth of wisdom. So he was the beginning of me understanding the craft for what it was. And you know, mentorship, I was lucky. I don't know if I would survive in today's new heated film world. We can get into that a little later.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate in my career to have a slow trajectory to prop master. Yes, I prop mastered little educational shows and little Canadian shows, but I didn't step into the Hollywood scenario until I was at my 10th year in the craft.
Wow.
And I got drug into it kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be a prop master. It was like, why would I want to do that? I love being an assistant. I'm good at it. But the industry wants people that they deem to be ready to do it. And I was lucky to have a producer named Grace Gilroy who's given me every break in my career saying, no, it's time. And I said, I don't want to do it. She said, it's time. And but mentorship was the most important thing. And it's the thing that, unfortunately, in the speed of the industry, we've lost.
Yeah. We'll touch back on that in a second, but what you just mentioned, there's something in there that I kind of wanted to explore. So 10 years before the big tent, right? The Hollywood circus, and so to speak. Is that when you felt that you had, like, when did you feel that you were, I'm always, my biggest concern is imposter syndrome, right? Like, when did you feel, you mentioned this inner confidence. So when did you feel that you went from getting a phone call one day to like being, okay, I'm in this. This is my job. I'm here. When was that? Was there a film? Was there a show? Was there a project? Like, what really said to Dean, yeah, I'm an assistant props master, or I'm a set dresser, right? Like, when did it feel real?
1991.
Okay.
Even though I started in 1986, I can pinpoint the year, 1991. We had a really slow winter. The Gulf War was on, the world seemed to stop. And Jan and I were at a real turning point. It was when I discovered that your skills as a prop master are not transferable to the real world when you're looking for a job. It's like, you know, they kind of go, you do what? You know. Anyway, out of the blue, got a phone call to see if I would assist a prop master named Jimmy Chow. Now, Jimmy Chow, who's retired now, throughout West, he's one of the best prop masters in the world. He's based in Vancouver, and you couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Jimmy Chow. I spent the first 5 years of my career hearing Jimmy Chow this, Jimmy Chow that. So my reaction was, Jimmy Chow? I have a chance to work with Jimmy Chow. That
for the listener,
he's like He was like the Great Gazoo or something. It was like, whoa,
for the listener.
So I remember
Dean,
I remember my. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for the listener, who is Jimmy Chow? Like I've never heard the name, so I'm curious. Like how to you? What was he doing at the time? That was.
Well, he had done Journey of Natty Gann. He'd been on the Beachcombers for the Canadians in the audience. But since then, just to give you a trajectory of Jimmy Chow's career, he's gone on to do X-Men, Man of Steel, Watchmen before he retired. So he's like, he's what everybody aspires to be in Canada. So anyway, all the prop masters I worked with from LA up to that point were really big, loud, boisterous. You have to be a real tough A-type personality to be on a John Frankenheimer film. So I expected to meet yet another big, loud, boisterous prop master. And we decided to meet in a little restaurant in Lethbridge, Alberta, where the film, it was called Leaving Normal. Ed Zwick was directing it. Ed Zwick, who directed Glory and later Legends of the Fall. When I walked into the restaurant, I was looking around for this big prop master and I saw this smaller, I don't want to diminish Jimmy's size, but and I walked, he was so kind, he was so funny, and he had such a love of craft. I had not encountered, like up until that point, the prop masters I worked with, they liked their job, but they didn't profess a love for it like Jimmy does. Jimmy cared about everything, every single thing. He was meticulous. And I went away from that set feeling like I had been lifted another 6 inches into the club of prop masters.
That's awesome.
And then I got a call. Then Janice, my wife, went for dinner one night and came home. She said, "Oh, I had dinner with a wonderful man named Henry. It looks like Clint Eastwood's bringing a Western to Calgary and they might want me to work on it." And I said, "Well, who is this Henry?" She goes, "Oh, he had a unusual last name. Oh, Bumstead." And I went, "Henry Bumstead? Vertigo? Kill a Mockingbird?"
Yeah.
This thing, because I'm a film fan.
Yeah.
She goes, "Yes, he was very kind and very nice." And so anyway, they hired Jan to do the film. And I was like, I have to get on that film. I don't care. I'll sweep the floor. I'll do anything to be on that film. And I had a phone call from the producer, David Valdez. And David Valdez is in my book a lot because we've worked together on a number of films since. But David phoned me and goes, "Hi, Dean. I understand you're the best prop man in Alberta. I wonder if you'd be interested in being interviewed by Eddie Aiona." And I said, "Well, thank you for the compliment. Being the best prop man in Alberta is like being the best ice hockey player in South America, but I guess that's okay." And so anyway, we set up an interview with Eddie Aiona, and I was lucky because I had the script. So because Jan was doing the film. So I read the script. I even did my own script breakdown. I did all this stuff. I went to the library. I researched. I had piles of books, not to take to show Eddie. I did it for myself so that when I'm having this, I'm going to nail this interview.
Yeah.
I'm going to get this job. So I go in and I sit down with Eddie. There's one problem in the interview. Eddie doesn't talk.
What?
Eddie was the quietest man I've ever met. And he just would look at me and he'd start something. And as you can tell, I'm quite verbose. And I wait for him to say something. We just sit there and stare at each other. And I realized 20 minutes into the interview, this is possibly the worst interview I could ever have.
No shit.
So I'm like, oh no, I want this job. So as he was like telling me sort of to leave, I had mentioned the Star 44 pistol that Clint fires in the scene with the kids he's shooting at the can, and how terrible that pistol was for the Confederates and in the Civil War, and how it would blow up in their hand. And Eddie's going, "Yeah, it's a terrible gun. It's misfired all through prep. We can't get that thing to fire 6 shots." And then I started talking about the Spencer carbine that Morgan Freeman used and how it was the rifle that turned the tide of the Civil War for the Union Army. And I believe that's how I ended up getting the job. Because I just had to save myself.
You're like, I need to leave on a high note. How do I walk out of this room not looking like it was a waste?
to let them know that I have passion for the craft.
So you're like the Kevin Feige of props, my friend. Like, you're so immersed in it, and that's like, I don't think you can be a filmmaker if you're not a fan, and that's what I think separates the great filmmakers and the great department heads and the great creative minds from the not so. Because if you're not a fan, if you're just like, okay, here's the backstory on this, and you really don't immerse yourself in the comic or the book or the art piece or whatever inspired this, then how do you know Morgan Freeman's gun was a better operating pistol than Clint Eastwood's gun, so that a American Civil War historian who sees Unforgiven goes, wow, they did their research, and that's because of you?
Yeah, I think that, I certainly didn't introduce those weapons to the script. Eddie and his assistant Mike Sexton, who's
No, just
since
your
gone
knowledge
on.
of it, though. Like your awareness
Yeah.
of it is what you pointed out. Yeah, that was a production decision, but with you knowing that is your salt in that scenario, and that's what makes greats, in my opinion.
Well, for cinephiles like yourself, and you say you can look at a film, and if something jars you, then you react to it, which no prop should be jarring. I worked with a great production designer, Mark Freeborn, once, and he's done Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Wonderful guy. He was meticulous right down to the typeset on a piece of paper, whether it was historically correct. Because he looked at me and he said, "We are the history teachers now. People look at our shows, and what we show them, they take as history."
Yeah.
And so we're really work hard at trying to not do it wrong. Now, sometimes the director, the script, the time frame, we have no choice. We are a service department. So all you can do is say, this is what it would be. Now, what do you want?
And then based on your time frame, based on your budget, based on the creative mind behind that decision. I mean, there's so many different variables. That's
Absolutely.
where, okay, so when you say, that's interesting, because I didn't know that. I figure everybody's in a room and they're all just like hunky-dory collaborating and everything is great. And obviously that's just, that's my side of the room because I'm on the outside of it. And I mean, if someone looked at my job and they were like, well, I can't imagine it's like that. Well, yeah, you don't know. But okay, so your service in regards to the scene, is that an accurate statement?
But you're not completely wrong about everybody collaborating. The really great directors I work with, and the great producers, and the great scripts I've worked with, we are collaborators. We feel as much a part of that, putting the performance on screen. We're enhancing the actor's performance with our props. We feel very much a part of that. We don't feel like we're, here's your widget, put it in front of the camera, give it back to me when you're done. We take great pride in trying to get the right thing into the actor's hands.
So now that I kind of have an idea of the authenticity and accuracy at which you do it, I'm curious, as I'm sure somebody out there is like, how your day goes. Like, what are some of your responsibilities in any of the projects that you've worked on? How are you? What's your day? What are some of the things?
Well, there's the reality of production is there's 3 stages. There's pre-production, there's production, then there's wrap. The most important part of a movie that I think has been lost in the last 7 years is pre-production. You have to solve your problems in prep. You have to finish your script in prep. You can change dialogue. You can change a few things while you're filming, but if you're still writing your script when you turn that camera on day one, you will never catch up. Your crew will never get grounded. You will never be settled. I say that from an old school perspective. I've done 3 films that had a white script when they started and a white script when they finished. One won Best Picture, Unforgiven. One was a good old-fashioned Western open range, and the other one was The Assassination of Jessie James by the coward Robert Ford. The one thing those 3 films had was they had a producer named David Valdez who did not believe in entering production unless you have a script that is ready for production and that you have rehearsals, you have pre-production planning, and that's gone out the window on a lot of projects now. And so you're constantly racing to try and solve problems. You're not creating from a place of preparation anymore. You're creating from a place of reaction. And I think it shows in some of the movies that we watch now. I can watch a movie now and go, well, those guys were just reacting all the time as opposed to methodically planning it out. And
sorry to cut you off there. I agree with you, and that's where my eye goes now. And it's by the grace of getting to talk to people like you, who've like I talked to. I've talked to screenwriters so many times that in now how I view a thing, I view a thing through, oh, wow, that feels rushed. That feels jarred. There's something missing. And I would be so captivated by the story and the big points and just, laissez-faire go through it. And when a movie does that to me, I go, wow, that's a piece. But I know what you're talking about now. And it just, yeah, like I've probably seen Jesse James 10, 15 times. It is a background movie as much as it's a movie that'll stop me from doing some of the most important things in my day. I'll just be like, yeah, I'll watch this. And the work that went into creating that, even being from Manitoba and having a portion of it shot here and getting to see our downtown district turn into.
Loved it. I love being there. I wish that there's a 4-hour cut that there's a lot more of your downtown.
Really?
None of us. Yeah. There was a 4-hour cut that played at Venice. And we had a whole funeral scene for Jesse James that came right through your market district with 300 extras. My wife put over 150 awnings on the buildings.
Wow.
Yeah, massive amount of work there. We loved being in your city. It was, that whole film was magical. We could do a whole podcast just on that film, I'm sure. It's a shame that it didn't get the traction, but also it's actually, in my mind, it's okay because it's an acquired taste. It's not a mass media type of film. It's a film that is an acquired taste for people. You have to know what you're getting yourself into when you sit down to watch the first frames of Roger Deakins' time-lapse photography open the film. You have to understand that you're actually looking at an Andrew Wyeth painting come to life. And Andrew Wyeth is not my line. It's from a critic that I loved when I saw it. So, yeah, it's a film that has resonated with me my entire career since. I've been talked about. People have talked to me about that film more than any film I've ever done. Directors, cinematographers, production designers. I feel like that film has probably opened up more doors for me since its release, and the fact that it's now deemed a forgotten masterpiece. And every day to just sit and watch Roger Deakins' work and
I was gonna say,
the work of the cast. It's just, and he's such a nice man. I mean, on top of it, everything, he's just so unpretentious and so kind. Matter of fact, we were sitting in Winnipeg. I wish I would have looked up to say the street corners. I could say we were on this corner, but we were in the market district, and we were having a tough day. Not because of people being angry or anything. It was just one of those days where there's a lot going on. And Roger was sitting on, there was some sort of cement or a bench or something, and he was sitting there. I came and sat beside him. I looked down and I said, Roger, I've done better work than this. And he looked at me, he goes, this film might end my career. So, yeah, the great Roger Deakins, and he said that, but that was an ease of conversation you could have. We all have. And I think that in film, you sometimes can get caught up in the pretentiousness of a certain cast member or a certain director or a certain producer. A lot of times those films don't work. The films that work for me are the films where you can walk onto a set, and as Clint Eastwood said, I cast my crew like I cast my film. If I cast a good crew, the film takes care of itself. Nothing could be truer.
That, yeah, back to your smarter minds, back to making sure that it's pick the right team players that play well together. That I can't even, and with creative minds where people go, well, I have an idea, and then it gets shut down publicly, that can be bruising. So when you have people who all understand that not everything might make it to camera, but let's try it, let's go, let's have some fun. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Were you with, because I kind of want to get into some of the weapon stuff here, because we've touched on how you kind of got into this, but were you doing the weapons on Jesse?
Yes.
Okay. That is, how do you do a Western? How do you do a period piece? Because I've talked to costuming, and they've said that period pieces can be the most expensive. They can be the most trying. What were some of the extents that you had to go to get your calibers and your rifles and everything right? What was that experience like?
Well, it's a trajectory of a career to get to Jesse James, obviously, with Unforgiven to start with, and then Open Range and a few Westerns along the way. You kind of learn
Sure.
what works. And the reality is, in Calgary at the time, we were doing so many Westerns, I could make 4 phone calls and I would have virtually everything I needed, and from responsible suppliers. To go to a movie like Jesse James, because of all the single action weapons and the rifles and the shotguns, the term prop gun is a misnomer in the press. It makes it sound to the public like we've got these plastic guns that are, it's a prop, and these are real weapons. These weapons will fire real rounds. The only difference is, on a film set, we have no live ammo ever on a set. If you see bullets being loaded into a weapon, they're known as a dummy round. They have a marble in them. There's no powder in them. There's nothing that will make them fire. Our blanks that we use are crimped. They don't have any wadding in them. It's just basically a brass cylinder, a cartridge that is crimped at the end to hold the powder in. And it also creates the pressure to make the bang sound as it extracts the powder and the flame and smoke. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but on a movie like, I'll talk to Jesse James, for instance. The pistols that Brad Pitt used in the film were historically correct to the book and the reports. Ron Hansen wrote the book, and in the book, they had talked about that Brad had, a specific Colt. He had a Smith & Wesson Schofield and the 2 Colts. And so what happened there was, when I came onto the film, Brad had been doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and he'd been working with an armorer named Gary Tours in Los Angeles and a weapons trainer named Thel Reed. And so when I came into the picture, I'm in charge of paying for the firearms and ordering the firearms. Thel and Gary had ordered Brad's pistols, and Thel was engineering them so that they'd be easy to draw. But here's the key that the audience never knew. The authenticity is that the serial numbers on Brad's pistols were the serial numbers that were when the bodies were found. That little detail was put in. Wow. Yeah. And also with the rings that were on Brad's body, I'll just divert for a second.
Yeah.
The engraving inside the rings that you never see in the movie or never talk, those were the actual engravings in the rings that we made him. The watch that he had had the engraving, a foreign engraving of the person that he stole it off a train robbery from. So we went to that level of detail.
My God,
when you get in, yeah. So that's where I want to go. That's where I go as a prop master. So with the firearms, the interesting aspect is there's not a lot of gunfire in Jesse James. With the train robbery sequence, obviously the shootout in the bedroom with Wood Height, and then of course the killing at the end of Jesse and then Bob Ford. And so the interesting thing about the shootout in the bedroom that presented a problem for me, not a problem, I had a solution because I used it on an open range. CGI muzzle flash at that point in time was still not being used. It was still too expensive to CGI muzzle flash in 2005. So on open range, when Sir Michael Gambon and Robert Duvall are shooting at each other in the jail, they're using what are known as electric guns. I had built special revolvers that had a very small fire, almost like a cap gun, just a glorified cap gun that would fire flame and smoke, but it wasn't blank fire. So it was much safer. You could literally shoot it against your hand. And so I had those guns developed. So when I got to the shootout in the bedroom with Dick Little and Wood Height, I built 2 electric guns for that shootout.
Cool.
Just to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
And, the reality of firearms on set is that I have 2 personalities. I have a personality of an easygoing, quiet prop master on the set that I learned from Eddie. I've always been quiet, but Eddie Aiona, on all the Unforgiven stuff in the saloon and everything, he's just such a quiet, professional, no rush, anytime a firearm is out on the set, you can't create anxiety. You have to remain steely calm. So when the firearms came out on Jesse James and in the bedroom and whatnot, once I walked onto that set, I was a different individual. It was like game 7 of a hockey playoff. You're totally in a zone. And suddenly that nice demeanor of, you know, hi, how are you? It's like, do you need to stand there? Because you can't be there. Do you need to be on the set? You need to leave the set. Can we run this camera remotely? Let's run this camera remotely. You know, all those things come into play, because as fun and as rewarding and as wonderful as this job has been, at the end of the day, you have to send everybody home safe.
Undisputed.
Yeah.
Completely undisputed.
Going to the firearm question, yeah, we researched everything. Gary and Thel were big helps down in Los Angeles. I picked up all the additional weapons out of Calgary. There was a really wonderful movie shop there that rents firearms to movies. And there was a large extension of collection of weapons that were left over from open range and the previous Western. So it's easy to do a Western in Calgary. And so, yeah, it was easy to come up with all the weapons and be authentic. And yeah.
With your wide, and congratulations. Like it's my favorite Western, because it's Deacon's use of the blurred vision in the shots and making it not so country Montana, Arizona, and giving it this darker feel that is more like, it treats Jessie like a sociopath more than it treats him like a cowboy. And Warner Brothers thought they were getting a cowboy movie, and they got the complete opposite. As Andrew Dominic called it, it's a Victorian Western. Yes.
If you'll notice, there are no cowboy hats in Jesse James.
There are none. You're right. It is very prim and proper, as opposed to like Corral Saloon. Like it had that Victorian era. Pomp and circumstance. Totally.
Yeah. I loved every minute of it.
When did you migrate in? Like, I imagine weapons weren't something you started with. So when did you migrate from just the priority of props and everything? Like, what was that trajectory like? How did you get into the weapons side of the scenes?
Well, in props, pre-Brandon Lee, because there's the pre-Brandon Lee prop department and post Brandon Lee.
Let's talk about that, because that's where really a lot of this is from.
Yeah, so the pre-Brandon Lee prop department, for me, and I can only speak personally, was a very pressured department when the firearms came out. I'd grown up around hunting rifles and whatnot, but in my personal life, I have no interest in firearms. I literally am a prop master who would sooner do a food scene than a shootout. But that being said, I'm also an expert in firearms because my job warrants me to be that.
Okay.
And so I'm highly skilled in it, highly skilled enough to know that I need to hand it off to somebody else. I don't have an ego about whether I'm holding the Uzi or somebody who has more skill than I am holding the Uzi. So the pre-Brandon Lee period was, I would go to a production manager and I would say, we're shooting a pistol this afternoon. I want to bring in, or in this scene, I want to bring in an armor. And the production manager would look at me and go, well, you have a license. Yeah, you're a prop master. Well, you can do it. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm also doing like a food scene and I'm also doing all this other stuff. I really would like to have someone whose focus is only on the firearm, so I can do all my other jobs, because props is not just firearms. Props is like the world.
Everything in the scene. My understanding, the definition would be anything that you can touch or move or interacts with the actor or the scene is a prop. Is that the generic definition?
Yeah, that's a generic term. It's, we work with Set Deck a lot about, the crossover pieces and whatnot. But yeah, if an actor picks it up, moves it, touches it, eats, looks at a map, reads a book, reads a newspaper, smokes, wears eyeglasses, anything like that, that's us. So on top of all of that other stuff, there's the firearm. So the pressure was immense. And, I would do a lot of it. And I can tell you, it'd be sleepless nights. It'd be like, okay, I gotta, And so what I would do there is I would look at and we were small departments back. There'd be two of us, a small Canadian show or whatever, it'd be two of us. And I would look at my assistant and go, okay, I have to take care of the firearm in the scene. So you do everything else. I don't want you, I don't want to be doing something over here and then run to the gun. And not to say that the gun is out. The gun was always the firearm is always in a safe or a lockbox until it's needed. And so the pre-Brandon Lee period, heavy stress. For me personally, just trying to budget it. Now, I work with people who allowed me to get armors, and don't get me wrong, but it was always a discussion, such a unnecessary discussion. And then, of course, we had the tragic accident with Brandon Lee. And after that, I know it empowered me to say, no, we are bringing in an armor, and this is why. And everybody understood that. It just took so much pressure off us. And the movie Armor aside in Los Angeles and everything, I can't speak to when it all started, but I can speak in my world.
Yeah.
In 1993 was when I started using armorers exclusively. I had been on movies with them before, on Dead Bang with Ray Mercer. I met the armorer Brian Kent on that movie, who went on to a long, great career in Western Canada. And so we used armorers there just because we had so many weapons. We just brought them in because they were guys who knew how to deal with the weapons. But post 1993, I think, insurance companies got involved, and, they want to see how you're handling your firearms, and safety and all of that. So we really turned the corner there. It got so much safer. And so that was really the turning point on armors coming into the business.
And then with you being a property master, you are licensed in both. Is that correct to say? Like, you've got the ability to you can do both. You can do just weapons, you could do props, or a combination thereof?
I think that all property masters need to know their limitations on what they can do. I think for me to call myself an armorer would be a disservice to the great armorers that I've worked with, armorers around the world that do this full time as their primary living. I am a property master. My first priority is props. That being said, I have a federal license. I figure out what weapons are needed. I order them. I sit with the director. We choose all the weapons. I budget the weapons. I budget the armor. I make the choices with the director as to what the weapons are on the show. But once we get to the filming floor, I don't have a big ego that says I have to be the guy walking onto the set holding the Lee Enfield rifle on Passchendaele, or, the 50 caliber machine gun. I'm the guy who looks over at the armor and goes, well, that's your job now. Tell me what you need.
That's so mind-blowing, because it's such a nice thing to hear when you're like, I don't need to be in the spotlight. I don't need it. And in a world where lives are in the balance, I mean, in any other way, if it's just your ego and there's very little to no collateral damage, then sure, argue that point. But like you said, this should never have been a discussion. It's just something that is, right? We don't ask the question, but of course, we're humans, and the sad thing about our species is that we don't learn unless something tragic, unfortunately, happens.
Well, in Canada, we're dealing on film sets where a lot of people have not been exposed to firearms in their personal life. You're in an urban center, so a lot of people don't know, and they hear the word blank, they think a blank is just, it's like a cap gun you had as a kid. The reality of a blank, when we do weapons training on a Western, to show our actors what the power of a blank is, so that they respect it. We used to take the yellow pages in Calgary, which was probably about 4 inches thick.
Yep.
We would put a full load blank into a Colt, hold it against the yellow pages and pull the trigger, and it would blow a hole 3 inches around through the yellow pages. Now that is the power of a blank.
That's the compressed gas coming out and causing that hole, right?
And the gunpowder explosion as well. Okay. It's still a gunpowder explosion. And a full load blank has the same amount of powder as a bullet. In some cases, maybe even more.
I want to circle back to this, but I also want to talk to you about, because it is obvious how much you love your craft. When you come into a world, what are some of you've done everything. You have 36 years. You've written a book. The Reason Why I Don't Say No, that's the name of the title. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, it's sitting in my computer, but I'm hoping to have it out this spring. It's called They Don't Pay Me to Say No.
Oh, I'm
Crazy
sorry. Can
Life
we not?
and-
Can we talk about that for a sec, or is that something that's?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay. All
yeah.
right. Yeah. I know sometimes properties are very hush hush, so I don't know if yours was or not.
No,
Okay.
God, no.
Okay.
I had no intention of writing a book. It accidentally happened.
That's accidental creative experiences. That's what we are here at this show. But when you've done westerns, you've done sci-fis, you've done fantasy, you've done Marvel, like you've done so much. What are some of your favorite experiences in world building and prop building that you like to talk about? If someone asks you what's one of your most memorable prop experiences in that world that you learned something about and you didn't know, what are some of those?
Wow, that's a good question. The interesting thing is, I always avoided sci-fi. I just was like, when you work in historical stuff as much as I do,
Yeah.
sci-fi is like the other world
It's
spectrum.
anti to what you're doing.
Yeah. So I remember in 2003, I just finished Walking Tall in Vancouver with Dwayne Johnson, and I went for dinner with an old friend of mine from Unforgiven and another friend of mine who was on many shows. And he said, "Hey, our show Stargate needs a prop master." And I looked at him and started laughing. And I said, I do cowboy movies. Like, you got the wrong guy. And long story short, I got a phone call from the producer. He somehow managed to talk me into it. And all of a sudden I was on Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis. I thought, well, if I'm going to fail miserably, I might as well do two shows at the same time. So when Stargate Atlantis was starting, I was also prop mastering SG-1. A lot of the same props were crossing over, same build shop, same studio. So I just took it like I was running a big feature film. And I just remember I was sitting in a meeting and the script would say, Teal'c, who's one of the characters, picks up his PFD and leaves the room. And I kept thinking, PFD, why does he need a personal flotation device? He's in space. And then finally I had to give in, and I asked I put my hand up and said, what is a PFD? And they went, oh, plot forwarding device. Do you have any ideas? And I'm looking at them like, what? Anyway, I think the thing that I learned is that was a heavy prop build show, and I had never really worked in build shops. Before that, I was always working with found objects, antiques, restoring them and whatnot. Suddenly I was in a world where we had to create a world. We had to create these alien weapons.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden I'm surrounded by all these gifted artisans who just blew my mind that they could do things with sculpt and 3D printers. And this is 2004 and 5 when 3D printers were just the 3D printer we had was the size of a Coke machine that could only print something 6 inches high, but yet we were using it. So I learned there that I also had to branch out to survive in this business. To have a long career, I had to step out of my comfort zone of doing one style of film, which is the historical Western or the historical, I just had to learn sci-fi. I had to learn green screen. I had to learn all of that stuff, because if I wanted to have a 36-year career and be a prop master that's sought after, I had to know this stuff. And I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I have more questions now, because that's
okay. Fire away.
That's where like I'm on your page right now, and like walking. I gotta ask. Like, you get to work closely with the actors, and I don't want to all looky-loo and shit, but like I'm like, this house is a rock house, and just watching that man's work ethic put him to where he is today. Like, he's a true talent and a gem. Like, what's it like getting to work next to the Brahma Bull for a minute? Like, and that's pre-Brahma Bull. That's right in the... He is
Rock, Dwayne, Rock, whatever we call him now, that was one of the funnest movie sets I've ever worked on. He's Kevin Bray, the director, and Dwayne. They're just all really nice guys. And, I spent more time trying to fix Dwayne's fart machine than I did trying to like, he's just a practical joker. And one of my favorite Rock stories is we had a big shootout at the jail.
You do
in Walking Tall.
Yep.
And he had to fire a Remington 870 shotgun, and I had an armor on set. And I walked up to Dwayne. I said, "Hey, have you ever fired an 870?" And he goes, no, I don't think so. And I said, okay, well, we'll take you off to the side and we'll just do some training. And my armor was so proficient with the pump shotgun, like when he was firing it, it sounded like a semi-automatic machine gun. That's how fast he was pumping it. Then he handed it to Rock, and Rock was doing the same thing, boom, 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 boom. And the armor came back and goes, wow, he's a quick study. He's going to be great. Well, that weekend, he had a movie called I think it's called The Rundown.
Yep.
Come out.
Yep.
And anyway, there's a sequence in there where he's doing things with shotguns that I'd never seen before. He's twirling them. He's pumping them under his arm. He's using his leg to kick. Like he was just doing amazing things. And I went up to him on Monday and said, hey, I saw your movie on the weekend. I thought you said you'd never fired an 870 before. You're doing things with shotguns that I've never seen done before. And he goes, well, I don't know what they're called. You know, he's kind of like me, because a lot of times I'll go into a weapon shop and I'll go, I want that big one there with the belt feed. And they go, oh, you mean the saw? And I go, okay.
Yeah.
You know, just,
I think
I
think if I took you through an afternoon of Call of Duty, you'd get all the nomenclature probably in one afternoon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, you know, I say that in jest. The reality is, by the time I go in, I generally know what I'm asking for. But every now and then I forget the name and I'm like, that one, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. Fuck model names all the time. The one with the big suppressor on the end and the huge, like, you know, bump stock. That's the one
that big one. Yeah. That thing. Yeah.
So that's great. But the point is that at that point, it does branch out. Because I was reading you this morning, and you've got Western timepiece. You know, you do have some stuff, but you're all over the map when it comes to staying within your niche. And then you branch out around Stargate Atlantis. Then you end up doing Rise of Silver Surfer. Then you end up doing Incredible Hulk, Passchendaele, which is one of the best World War I movies. Inception, for a minute. If like, what's a Nolan film like coming from where you came from, right? Like you said, it was 10 years before you were there, and then when you were finally there, you're at the dance. Now you're at a Nolan set.
The Nolan film is a funny story. Because what happened was I was doing a TV show in Vancouver called Human Target. I think it ran for 2 years on Fox.
Sure, yeah, it's right
Fox.
before. Yeah, it's right after.
It was actually a lot of fun to work on, but it was hard as hell. Anyway, I got called to see if I would come and help on the Nolan snow unit at Fortress Mountain in Alberta.
Okay.
And the production manager who I'd worked on Jessie James with, I said, no, I'm booked. I'm sorry, I can't come. So I recommended a good prop master friend of mine. He went. Well, then my show shut down for a few weeks to retool the scripts. And so I contacted them and said, hey, if you still need help, I'll come out. And the guy said, be here Friday. So I had worked in a ski shop when I was going to SAIT, you know, waxing skis and doing all that. And I was really tired. So my Jessie James assistant was coordinating the Canadian crew. And she said, why don't you run the ski shop for all the stunt guys for us? And I went, sure, I'd love to do that. You know, I can do that. So I get there. And I arrive at like 5 a.m, and the prop master, Scott McGinnis, and his assistant, Eric Garibay, are there. And I just said hello to them. You know, that was it. And because we had the entire cast on the top of the mountain in their skis, Leo and Ken Watanabe and
it's the best
Tom
Olympic
Hardy.
ski team ever.
Yeah, they were all up there. It was a helicopter shot as well. So you had and we were right at when we got first light, we were filming. So Scott said, I want everybody to come up on the mountain because it's the first morning here. We've got so many casts. Let's just get everybody up there, including ski shop guy. so anyway, you know, don't know your name, you're ski shop guy. So I get in the snowcat. It's really like, it's 5 a.m, and I'm on Pacific time zone. So it's actually 4 a.m. to me. And my assistant looks over and she goes, oh, by the way, and we were pulling a trailer of skis and all. So she goes, oh, by the way, Leo has 2 pairs of skis. Because if it's really cold, he might be wearing a boot that's a half size larger. I went, yeah, okay. You know, just information, kind of forgot.
Yeah.
We get to the top of the mountain, and a Nolan set is a fast moving set. It's like nobody sits down. There are no director chairs. It's a machine. It's going. And so we get up to the top of the mountain, and the helicopter's in the air. Chris Nolan's there. There's an energy, like, you know, everybody's got to get ready. Everybody's hustling. And everybody's clicking into their skis. And I'm standing there, sort of in the back, prop guy, nobody knows. And I see Leo stepping into his skis. and his bindings aren't working. Helicopter's in the air. And the prop master is looking around and he sees me. He knows I'm the ski shop guy.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he has that look we've all had on set. We've all been there. We've all been there in that moment when, oh God, camera's about to roll and this thing is not working. So I go over to him. He goes, hey, can you adjust these bindings? And I go, yeah. And I pull out my Leatherman and I'm kneeling down. Everybody's looking at me and I'm thinking, I haven't adjusted bindings in 18 years. And as I'm about to do it, I go, hey, he has another pair of skis. And I unloaded them. And I said, and I know where they are. So suddenly with everybody, I go running off to the snowbank where everything's hidden. And I come running back in and I throw the skis on the ground or in the snow. And Leo steps over and all I'm thinking is, please let this work. I really want to be anonymous. Just please let this work. The helicopter's in the air. There's all this anxiety, of course.
Yeah.
Click. And all of a sudden it's click, click. And the prop master looked at me and goes, I don't know your name, but you're staying on set with me. And so I went from my cushy, warm ski shop job at the bottom of the mountain to suddenly being on set for the next 9 days on the top of the mountain. It was the best 9 days on set. It was the perfect tonic because I was on a really tough show that I was administrating more than I was working on set. And suddenly I'm on top of the mountain with a great prop master, a great assistant prop master, and I'm on a Nolan crew, which are all world-class technicians and craftspeople. I was like in awe for 9 days. And I, at the time, I'm 50 years old. I'm a 50-year-old man, and I'm standing up there feeling lucky to have been there. And I got along so great. And the interesting thing was, because I worked in a lot of cold weather and they haven't, there were a lot of things we had to do. And I go, well, that's not going to work. Let's do it this way. This is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And so I became an asset. And the third day, the prop master came up and he goes, I just found out you're a prop master and you didn't tell me. I said, I'm not here. I'm working for you.
Yeah.
It's like I could care less. The term prop master, whatever. I just want to be on set and participate in the craft.
And it shows, man, because everybody wants to work with you. Like it's so nice to hear that you were, I mean, it's not nice to hear that you were almost splitting dog food with the dog, but that's such a deserving, like you have such a deserving response to almost considering having to do that. Like you just push through and you get to have these stories. And I wonder, I'm a keepsake guy. If you look behind me, you can see a wall.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm seeing it.
Right. So that lightsaber there, that's a Disneyland Star Wars World Experience sword, and I had one hell of a time getting that out of Florida. That was fun.
I bet.
When they saw it, everybody wanted to play with it. Then it became an interesting moment. But nonetheless, it's the closest thing I will ever have, and everybody knows it. To a lightsaber. So when you got into like the period piece stuff, I would find is nostalgic and fun. And if you're a history buff and if you like telling a story, it must be very, very easy to do. But when you get into the world building and the die casting and the 3D printing, have you ever made something that you were like, God damn it, if nobody was watching, I would take this home?
Boy, I don't really, it's an interesting thing. It's like a memorabilia. I don't really have much in my house. I kind of enjoy it for the time I have it. And then I'm really excited about what the next adventure will be. And that one's in the memory bank and behind me. Boy, I can tell you a prop that I would love to have.
Yeah.
I was blessed to have worked with, funny man Barry Sonnenfeld, Men in Black trilogy,
yes,
and his designer Bo Welch. I did the adaptation of A Series of Unfortunate Events for Netflix. We did 3 seasons.
Yep.
And
Neil Patrick Harris, right?
What's yeah?
Is that Neil?
So
yeah.
The key prop was a spy. Yeah, the key prop was a spyglass, and the spyglass we made had 82 moving parts. It was all CNC, brass inlay. We had a whole language that we developed on it. It was a piece of jewelry. And it took about 2 months to build. And I still remember my very first meeting with Barry and Bo, who were very funny. I walked in and I had a paper towel roll and a toilet paper roll taped together with painter's tape. And I went, I know this is not inspiring confidence at this moment, but I only had this here for size. How big do you want this spyglass to be? And then we developed the spyglass, and everybody coveted it. I know at the end of the show, I think Neil got one, and Barry got one, and our producer got one. And they're just really a beautiful piece. It really was the signature piece of the show. It's the only prop that traveled through all 3 seasons, because every 2 hours was a new world. We had to create an entire new world every 2 hours. That was probably the most challenging prop show I've ever done, because you have Barry and Bo, who are visual perfectionists, and I'm trying to create their vision. I remember at the end of the first season, Barry said, "You're coming back, right?" And I said, "I don't know if I can hit the level that you guys require again. I just don't know if I can do that." Of course, I went back and
nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest prop was putting a 3-year-old in a 1950s dive suit with a diving bell helmet. And we had to, and we had to, develop the tanks and the helmet. We had a window of 4 pounds. Nothing could be more than 4 pounds. And this had a whole lighting system in it that you could dim and everything. And we did it. And they looked so amazing.
My God, like
in reality, they weigh 65 pounds.
That's what's a secret, like a trick that you guys like? Do you have a thing that has constantly bailed you out in scenarios where like your Leatherman is obviously like the tool of the trade, but is there something every prop master has in their toolkit that like signifies you if you don't have this, you're probably not going to do well?
Glue.
Really? Glue's the
we know glue. We know glue really well. Glue and zap straps. I don't know how many times zap straps and glue have saved me. I tried to stay away from duct tape. It's really not that attractive. But I think that you have to test things. That's the other thing about pre-production. I remember you asked me a while ago, give me a break on your days, and then I went off on a tangent how pre-production is gone.
Yeah, let's touch back on that. Like, what are you doing in pre-production so that the listener knows? Like, are you die casting? What is that for you? Why is that? Well,
that's the design period. Let's talk world building, and I'll use a series of unfortunate events as an example, because every 2 hours we built a world. So I would get the script and I would break it down, and I would immediately request a meeting with Barry Sonnenfeld. And meanwhile, my team, we would gather samples and examples and photographs and put up photo boards. And we would basically have the 2 hours in some shape or form, in some presentation form, in a boardroom. And we would bring Barry in and we would just hit the big points of the ideas. Okay. What do you want here? What do you want here? Meanwhile, Bo Welch had an incredible team of concept artists. So if we had a really tricky prop like a spyglass or a specific weapon or anything that we needed concept art for, we would get the concept art done for us. And then whether we needed drafting plans after that, most times with props, we didn't have time for the drafting plans. We had to look at the concept art and build up the concept art because we just did not have time to go through all that level. There's an episode in a series of unfortunate events that probably surmises the whole prop experience of prep in one prop. And basically, Catherine O'Hara plays an evil optician named Dr. Orwell. And Dr. Orwell has an office that has a hypnosis chair. And the hypnosis chair, actually, when you sit in it, clamps you in, you can't get out. There's a head thing and the phoropter comes in, there's arms, there's all this wild stuff on this set. Well, at the same time, I think the episode is called The Miserable Mill. At the same time, the special effects team, set deck construction, are all building the mill in an abandoned warehouse, like literally with machines and the giant saw blade with the guy tied to a log, all the equipment's being fabricated in this warehouse. And there I am, I need this chair and this whole device. There's nobody to build it. So it's on me. I went to the art director and said, "Can you give me some plans?" besides this concept? And they said, we have nobody who can do that for you. So I immediately looked and I went, okay, well, this stuff has to be held up by a steel ring. So I commissioned, get me a 6-foot steel ring made that, you know, and so I had the steel ring and I had the concept art, and I called the construction coordinator, the rigging grip, who has the chain hoist that can hang things, the set decorator, art director. I had them all in my lockup with a steel ring on the floor and the concept art. I went, okay, we have to do this. And so the set decorating department found an antique barber's chair, had it painted and reupholstered, and then gave it to me. I took it to the same scene shop that built the spyglass and had them fabricate the motorized shackles. Then I had my buyer find antique phoropters on eBay. And then we bought video arms to hold the phoropter. Then Set Deck got an antique tube TV to hang off. And then we had the grip department hang the ring in the Set Deck shop so we could build everything over the chair. And we only had one day to install everything on the set because the set was being built. So we brought everybody into the set. We hung our rig, we put our chair in, we ran our wires to power everything in one day, and it worked perfectly the next day. And we got given a book at the end of the movie that had a picture of the set concept, and a picture of the set. And I had to look really close to tell which was the concept art and which was the real set.
I'm not surprised. I'm actually trying to find it right now and find an image of it to see what we're talking about. Dang nabbit, my Google skills are nowhere near that of Joe Rogan's Jamie, but that's okay. I'll find it and I'll post it with the episode so everybody can see it, just so that they get an idea, or send me an image of it if you want for that too. But
yeah, if I can,
these are like, and that's kind of what I wanted to find out, because that all sounds so expensive, first of all, right? And most people would just be shocked at probably what the cost is to make something like that. But
and I had the luxury of budget.
Sure.
And I think anytime you have the luxury of budget, it allows you to do things like that. But, you know, I've done a lot of small shows. You mentioned Passchendaele. We didn't have a lot of money for Passchendaele. We had to make some choices that, you know, when I look back on it now, I wished I would have made a few different choices in some of my choices and props. But at the time, you know, you're in it. You're trying to make the best decision on the fly with the resources you have at hand. And I remember one time somebody said, "You should see what I can do when I have money." And my thought was, well, it's what you can do when you don't have money that really sets you apart.
Right. Yeah, that's the skill set. That's the that's the MacGyver in all of you.
Yeah.
That's the problem solver in all of you. And that's really when talent shows. Yeah, okay. If I had $1 million, do you know what I would do with this podcast? My God.
Yeah.
I'd have a truck.
I know.
Right? Like driving around leafed out with all of our but it's what you can't do with the little that you have, and that's what makes genius, I think. So
it's
I
think the thing that you'll constantly hear from me is I feel very lucky.
You sound very excited to have done everything. Like there's a tone in your voice of just pure bliss of being a part of, like, you're just happy to be there, right? You're like, how many people can I throw stone at that if they said that they got to be in a Nolan set, you were trying to not save the ski scenario? Like you wanted to be there because it was fun to be there. And that's what they say. You'll never work a day in your life if you really enjoy what you're doing. As somebody who's done this for 36 years, who has seen the 3D printers make the crazy things and the tools that you can buy, everything, how do you look at film? How have you watched film over the last while? I just want to get a little bit more out of you on your eye before we dig into the meat and potatoes of this. But when you sit down to watch a movie, can you go in, or do you have a critical eye?
No critical eye. I'm no different than anybody else. I watch movies. I want to be taken away.
Yeah.
I want to escape. I'm more critical about the movies I watch. I don't just watch anything. But when I watch a movie or a great TV show, I want to be immersed in the story. At the end of the day, the most important document we all get is the script. It is the most important thing. I remember when I was in film school or television class, and my my television instructor pointed at the clock on the wall and he says, "See that?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "That's God." And then he pointed at the script and he said, "And that's the Bible." I mean, certainly I've read a lot of scripts that weren't biblical, but at the end of the day, the whole foundation of what we do is when we get that script on our desk or in our computer. That is our journey. That will be our journey for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. That's our journey. And when you're making the film, you want people to watch the film. And when I watch a film, I don't look at the props. I don't even notice the props. I don't notice anything. I'm immersed in the character. I'm immersed in the story. Even if a prop is wrong or bad, I don't really react to it because I'm so in the story. If I start noticing things, then that tells me the script's not very good.
Yeah, and I think with the amount of content we're all fed these days on the avenues that we can get it, the layman is kind of noticing that, right? Like you can see well, it's tougher to find the gem in the pile of pebbles, but you mentioned earlier that the way film has changed and everything, and I think now everybody's making something to make a quick buck more than they're wanting to make something that stands the test of time in culture. I think the filmmaking where art is also part of it is going by the wayside, and replacing it are fun Marvel big tent movies that have $250 million budgets, but while at the same time they won't be remembered. I won't remember Thor as much as I'll remember Jesse James. I will always talk about Jesse James in ways of that it's an art piece as much as it is a story. I will never say that Thor was ever a clinic in making a film, because it's a carbon copy of something else with a different story. Not that that's bad, it's just what I feel is being lost. Where are your thoughts on where that kind of is with a trajectory in film?
Well, I think you're very perceptive in that comment for sure. And I've had similar feelings. I think that a lot of the peak TV that we see right now with Netflix and Amazon and their 8-episode arcs on their shows has almost become the independent studio style movies that we don't see much anymore, the dramas. It's at the end, at its heart, it's still big business. They still want to get the biggest bang for their buck. And obviously China comes into play on those big Marvel films and whatnot. So that's why you don't see the smaller films per se getting the screen time they deserve. I'm very fortunate. My wife is a member of the Academy because she was nominated for an Academy Award for Unforgiven. So a lot of the smaller movies that might not make it into the big theaters, or in where I live near Penticton, British Columbia, we can watch over the holidays on a big screen at home. And there's some really charming movies that are made that may not get the press, may not take up the oxygen. So because the big films are taking up the oxygen, I've always, even though you mentioned Silver Surfer, where I did second unit, I've stayed away from those films, not because I'm an egomaniac of, I don't do that type of filmmaking. Yeah. It's just that I'm a story guy.
Yeah.
I really want to, I'll do a $1 million movie with a great script as opposed to a $150 million movie that's CGI laden. As a matter of fact, when I was doing Silver Surfer second unit for Jimmy Chow, which was fun. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. I got called to do a little CTV movie about the tragedy at Marathorpe where the 4 RCMP members were killed. My first reaction was, why would you want to do a movie? It was only 2 years after the incident. Why would you want to do that now? Then I got sent the script, and the script was so well written, so tastefully done.
Well, and you're from the East Coast, right?
Yeah. So when the production manager called me, usually the line is, "Well, what are you making on your current film?" Huh. And I said, "You don't want to know." And he goes, "No, tell me." So I told him, and the phone went dead. And I went, "No, you don't understand. I want to do your movie. I'm coming to do your movie. Just let's just find a number we can work with.
Yeah.
I'm coming to do your movie. Regardless, I'm coming to do this movie."
That's such a great thing, because you're a purveyor of putting that out there, because I've noticed, I've gone through it. I used to be, send me to Blockbuster, I want the film that has 3 copies. right? I want the small. I want the little guy. I'm a big fan of the underdog, mostly because I am one. So that's what character I like seeing on screen. That's what I emote and relate to. So nowadays, though, I've noticed I've been like, yeah, I want to go back to, because my wife Shauna, she watches the kooky and the weird and the independent and the stuff that doesn't really, and then she's brought me back into it where I like, for our show, I'm like, you decide what we're going to watch tonight, because I wouldn't normally watch it, and I need that back in my life. And I cried in Endgame, but it's only because they made me cry. It's not because it's a moving story outside of a comic book. But I think I cried more because I got to see my characters of my youth on screen dying than I really cried because it was an emotional moment. And finding the $1 million movies that have all the hardworking, like all with the no budget, means they really got to make it work, like you said.
You have to have a strong script. You can't be saved by CGI. You have to have a strong story, and you have to have really great actors on that screen. You know, you just have to, people have to believe in what they're watching.
Do you work with a lot of the actors? Like, do they like being part of the process? I've noticed talking with Patty Henderson that she worked with Keanu, and Keanu, when they did Siberia, really enjoyed being a part of the process, being there. Do you find that there's some times when you've been able to work so close with the actor, or you're just making sure?
I'm going to say pretty much almost every big movie that I've done and small movie, as soon as I can have access to the actors, they've been involved in the process.
Nice.
And they've loved being involved in the process. They've come to my show and tells. They've picked the items up off the table. I've watched them transform into character in front of my eyes with the director. You know, it's a wonderful thing to put something out on the table, and you have a show and tell. You bring the director, and you have, you know, maybe one or two of your cast members are there. And all of a sudden they look at something that they know is pivotal in a scene, and they pick it up, and all of a sudden they're running lines in front of you. And you're seeing the very first moments of a character on screen. I'm going to give you a great actor story.
Yeah.
Because I know you're a film.
Yeah.
Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
Unforgiven.
Okay.
My boss, Eddie Aiona, said, hey, we just moved into the town. We've been filming out on the prairie first so we could get the town built. And Eddie Aiona came to me and he said, hey, Dean, Gene Hackman is coming to talk to Clint about his character. Let's get his options of gun belts and his pistol and his badge and stuff. Let's just have it there to put on. So I'm standing there, and I'm a really quiet guy. Like, the thing about props is you want to be there, but you don't want to be there. In other words, you're just a piece of the furniture in a way. You're just back there waiting for them to give you the nod to come in. And I'm standing there, and Gene is asking Clint. He says to Clint, he's, you know, his concern was Little Bill's character, you know, is quite violent. And he's saying, I'm really having trouble figuring this character out, like how to play this character. And Clint is not a man of many words. He just looked at Gene and said, I kind of see you like Daryl Gates, who at the time was the chief of the LA Police Department in their very tough Rampart years of, you know, Rodney King and all that was going on, the riots.
Yeah, okay.
And Gene was, oh, you know what? I understand. And so we put the stuff on Gene and we do the movie. Like, working with Gene, being in a set, watching Clint direct Gene and Morgan Freeman, or watching Clint direct Gene and Richard Harris. I mean, you sit in that room and it's a little set and it's on location. You're not on the stage. And you're thinking to yourself, I can't believe I'm being paid to be here. Like, that's all I kept thinking. The whole time I was on that movie, I was going, I can't believe they're paying me to be here. Fast forward to 1993, my wife is nominated for an Academy Award. We're there through the whole process. We were there for a week. We've gone to private parties with Clint. We've done all the stuff that, you know, Canadians are like. Jan and I kept thinking, somebody's going to say, how the hell did you guys get here? And especially, how did a prop master get inside an award ceremony? Yeah. Anyway, we're at the governor's ball. I'm sitting right beside David Peoples, who wrote the original Blade Runner, who also wrote Unforgiven. Sitting with Henry Bumstead on the other side, who, you know, Vertigo, To Kill a Mockingbird. Gene walks over to our table with his Oscar that he won for playing that Little Bill Daggett, the best for, puts it on the table in front of us. She goes, I just want to thank you guys for helping me win this. My thought was, I was there the minute he stepped onto the set, the very first time, to ask for direction on how to play his character. And I was there to have him put his Oscar on the table in front of me and thank us for helping him.
That's so full circle by definition, and getting and like watching it be born, watching the child of the character grow and getting to see the fruits of the labor, and then like you're the guy that made him get the approval and the nomination. And
one of the guys, Eddie,
yes,
my boss.
yes.
But the reality of that situation is, when you get around actors, I've worked with Anthony Hopkins twice. Don't mean to name drop.
No. Yeah, it's what you do.
But you get around all these great actors. There's an economy in how they work. None of them have entourages. Brad Pitt didn't have an entourage on Jesse James. There are no entourages. They came to work just like the rest of us. They came to work prepared. They came to work ready. They didn't have any of the insanity that goes on in today's world of the internet and all of that. They came to work in a safe zone. They knew that we would take care of them. They knew that we were there to do our job.
Yeah.
And there weren't a lot of takes. They're so good at their craft. Gene Hackman, 2 takes, move on. If we needed to do 2 takes. Richard Harris, 2 takes, move on. Morgan Freeman, 2 takes, move on. There was none of this crazy that can go on a set. It was, I feel like I had the best film education for the time that I was in film. The last 5 years to 7 years, with the growth of the industry, the speed we're going, the people who've been promoted that have no clue how to do their job. The only thing that keeps me sane is the fact that I had this wealth of experience and knowledge backing me up in my soul to at least try to continue to do the right thing every single day, despite people making bad decisions or pulling me in different directions. I have the ability to go, no, we are not doing that.
Which is why the book title is so great. The reasons why I say no. Or the reason, what is that?
No, they don't pay me to say no.
They don't pay me to say no. There it is.
And the reality is, I do say no. The original, I did have another title for the book, which was funnier, but in light of the recent tragedy, I've changed it. I'm not even going to say what it was on the podcast because I don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's.
Totally... I don't want to bring it up. But I said to my wife this morning when I knew I was coming on your podcast, I said, if I talk about the book, I have to change the title in light of the recent tragedy. And she said, "Oh, that's such a great decision that you did that."
Yeah. Oh, well, and let's get into that because, and I told you this in talking to each other. I said, I just want to know what you know because you've been doing this for so long, and it's more about, hey, if you are reading the articles and watching how fast the news cares more about being first than right, this is just a conversation about how it should have gone and what goes into it and the ideas from a professional who knows, so that we get some sort of nuanced conversation. I'm not saying I'm the one who's responsible for that, but that's the responsibility I feel I have. So with the speed of the news that's gone on, essentially, if you haven't heard, there was a horrific tragic accident in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on the set of Alec Baldwin's film Rust, where the director and the DOP, the Hylana Hutchins, am I saying that right, Dean?
Yes.
And Joel D'Souza, the director, Hylana was killed by a prop gun. That's what they're saying. So, in essence, to what you know and what you've read and what you've talked about, because it's been probably a pretty crazy weekend for you, just what should have gone down? What is the proper way that would have never happened?
Well, first of all, it's a gut punch to all of us in our craft. We've evolved so much in technology, in how we use weapons on set, that it was so unnecessary, given that we do CGI muzzle flash now in a lot of cases. So, the industry is heartsick. You don't have to just work in props to be heartsick. It is reverberated. It is rocked the foundation of our core of how we proceed in our industry. And, I've read the reports. There's a lot, as you said, news everybody wants to be first. They don't necessarily want to be right. So I can only speak to how I have done things and how American armors, this is not, this is not because they were in the States. This is not because they were in, this is just a breakdown of one situation, because I was trained early in my career by top American professionals that are wonderful at their craft and take it very serious as we do here. So I'm going to take you to Open Range because it had one of the best Western shootouts ever filmed. I was on that set. I was the property master. I did a lot of armoring. I had an armorer with me, Brian Kent, and I had my assistant, Johnny Jones, and we all took sections of who we took care of. I took care of Kevin Costner, Johnny took care of Robert Duvall, etc. So here, I'm gonna give you one day on Open Range, because you're gonna hear all the reports of what happened down there, and all you can listen to is maybe I say how I do it.
Yep.
And then you can understand how it fell apart along the way.
Totally.
So on Open Range, the very first thing I did in the morning, every morning, there's a safety meeting on set, and they talk about the various safety things, and then I get my time as a property master. And every morning I was consistent in my message. My job as a property master is to have you go home safe tonight. For that to happen, you have to listen to me, and I will be the final say either whether something is safe or not. That's it. Then we would block a scene. So before we block the scene, because everybody likes the feel of real weapons in their hands, the term prop gun that's in the press, as I said earlier, makes it feel like it's something other than a real gun. These are all real Colts, Remingtons, Schofields. I mean, they're reproductions of the original patterns, but they're real. They will fire. They're open barrel. They will fire 5 rounds.
They work.
So they work. First of all, never in my 36 years has there been a live round on my set or in my truck anywhere near anywhere I've ever filmed. Never, ever. So what I do that morning on Open Range is once we get set for the rehearsal and we assign who has what firearms, we already know, we've planned it out in pre-production, we've had our meetings, we know exactly who has what. We go to the vault, we open it up, we pull out the weapons in our trailer, and we check every single one before it goes to before it leaves the truck. We check, we make sure that there's nothing in the barrel, that the dummy rounds that we use, because if you look at a Western gun in a movie, you have to see the bullet heads in the chambers of the cylinder. Those are dummy rounds, no powder, can't fire. We load them, we click them off. When we get to the set, the very first thing we do is we go to the assistant director, we pull the camera people over the cast, and we click off every pistol in front of them to show them that if you drop the hammer on your rehearsal, nothing is going to fire. They are completely safe. So then we hand them off to everybody. We say the same thing. It's not a toy. Don't twirl it. Don't point it at anybody. It's to be respected. Treat it like it's loaded. All of that. We do our rehearsal. Cut on the rehearsal. Okay, who's firing in this setup? Okay, Robert Duvall's going to fire the double barrel shotgun in this take, or Kevin's going to fire his pistol. Okay, how many shots are we firing? Okay, so then what we do is, because our weapons have dummy bullets in the cylinder, we go, okay, we have to load in 2 blanks and still keep the other 4 dummy bullets in. So if I'm pointing it at you, you can see that there's bullets in it, but 2 of the chambers have blanks. What we do is flashlights down the barrel, make sure there's nothing, none of the bullet heads have come off. The barrel is clear. I had a T-rod made that I would run down the barrel as well, just to check for an obstruction. We load our blanks. Oh, I went too fast. Before we load the blanks, we look at all the camera people that are in proximity. They're the most vulnerable people on the set besides the cast. And we say, who doesn't have to be here? Move off to the side. You can't stand here. We put up the appropriate safety gear. We give everybody the appropriate safety equipment to keep them safe. We get everybody set. We make the weapons hot. We wait for the cameras to roll. Once the camera rolled and we look and we make sure everybody is set in position, we then hand the weapon in and say the weapon is hot. 2 shots, 4 shots. We say half load, quarter load. We tell the load size as well, so everybody knows what's coming. We do the shot, we cut. Nobody's allowed to take off any of their safety gear or anything. We all step into our chosen people that we're taking care of. We pull their weapons, we make sure that they're completely safe and clear. And then once we say all clear, everybody can pull their safety gear on. It's a process that is consistent. It never changes day to day. The sun's going down, hurry, hurry. There's no hurry, hurry. It's like, this is the process. These are the steps. I've had many times ADs in my face going, how much longer, how much longer? And I always say, the more you keep talking to me, the slower it's going to go. I mean,
Yeah.
It takes as long as it's going to take.
Yeah.
Like, stop asking.
And
the tragedy that is that happened, and then the post-mortem that's unfolded, like all tragedies, something good comes of it. We all learn. We learn hard lessons. But this one hurts. The reason this one hurts the most is because we already know everything to prevent it. We've already had all the steps in place to prevent it. We've had them in place since Brandon Lee was killed. We have been diligent about it. We have drilled it into every prop person, every armorer, everybody we've hired on a set, ADs, directors, they all know. And we talk about it in pre-production. That glorious pre-production period that's getting cut down and cut down and cut down is that we talk about this. We talk about how it's going to go. And here we are. Here we are.
It's also, I mean, it's bittersweet that with the negotiations with IATSE in North America, and I know it's different in Canada, but it's if there is going to be a learning lesson, it's just so great that there's already a spotlight on long working hours and safety and keeping these people safe in scenarios like this. Like we can assume, I'm sure something was rushed, right? If we're going to say anything, obviously what can be said without uncertainty or with certainty is just a step was obviously missed, and then this is the domino effect. Could one say that, or is that even too presumptuous?
No, I think that you're safe to say that. I think that one doesn't want to jump to conclusions and point fingers at various crew members, but I will say this: you have a system in place. The weapon should never be out of the sight of the armorer or the prop master at any point of that weapon's travel to a set. It should never be out of their sight. No other crew member should be touching that weapon. There are only 3 people on a set that can touch the weapon. Well, there's more, but what I mean by that is that the prop master, the armorer, and the actor. The prop master is the assistant prop master or other supplementary prop crew that are assigned specific people who are firing weapons. If it's a large shootout like open range, they are tasked with being able to handle their particular weapons. But the chain of command the chain of delivery to a set is very small. There's really, if I'm handling my weapons, it's me to the actor, back to me. If the armorer is handling a certain group of people, it's his hands to the actor, back to him. Same with any supplementary armorers or prop people. Nothing is left laying on the table. It's literally moving. If it is on a table, there's somebody standing there. Let me rephrase that. We have tables.
Oh, yeah.
There's always somebody standing there. So the industry will change. We've seen firearms being written out of scripts. I've been on shows where we've had a gun in the script and all of a sudden they go, we don't need to do that. Let's come up with something else.
Yeah.
We've seen more CGI gunfire. We've seen CO2 gas guns being used now, like the pellet guns that look like a real Beretta or a real Glock. And I think it was going that way because of the mass shootings before COVID. And since COVID, like branching into the whole worldwide global industry, the tremendous growth of the industry has not allowed people to be trained properly in any of their positions that are taking on these shows. The big shows, for the most part, have highly skilled people, but when you get into these smaller shows that are, you know, the 20-day shoot, and you're starting to really push the envelope on available crew because there's just not that many people out there.
Yeah, quality for quantity, right? Where if you cut that,
we just get it on the screen.
and I mean, with the subscription service comes that idea, right? We're humans. We like our shit fast and neat and digestible. And unfortunately, you know, those are unforeseen circumstances, as much as streaming has been able to showcase things that I never thought I'd want to watch before. With all of this, with the way filmmaking's going, is that a threat to the Western because of authenticity, because of continuity, because of the accurate? Like, could you make a gas gun like you made an electric gun to keep things safe? Is that something that could keep? Because that we're talking about an accurate firing weapon that was, because we are in the 1800s or the 1700s for a Western. You can't, like, is there a way to get authenticity without sacrificing accuracy?
I think we have no choice.
Okay.
I think we have to. I think that, you know, the CGI muzzle flash now, like, you know, for instance, if I had a Colt revolver and if I was in, you know, the scene with Robert Duvall and Sir Michael Gambon in the jailhouse, and they're shooting their pistols at each other, you know, you lay in a layer of smoke in the set to begin with, and you CGI the muzzle flash, and they're just cycling through their dummy rounds. I think that, you know, on the side shot, it doesn't matter that you still have the heads of the bullets on the cycling through.
Yeah.
On a front shot, you'll just have to make sure that you know, they can digital, like what they can do with digital now. It's I think where it's tougher will be with the M4s and the big full auto machine guns and stuff like that, because of the brass casings flying and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But you know what? CGI has evolved so fast now, and they do so many things that just blows your mind. That,
well, ILM is doing what they did with The Mandalorian. Did you watch that series at all?
I haven't got Disney Plus.
Okay.
Even though I'm working for Disney a lot, I got everything. But
we can cut that out so they don't ever hear. I know they're big fans of the show. I'm totally kidding. Okay. But like,
I'm getting it because I worked on a big Disney film with David Lowry, so I'll be getting it so I can watch the film.
Nice. Well, when you do, Industrial Light and Magic came up with an idea where they took 3D game rendering from the video game world and they applied it to filmmaking for the set world. So they can.
I'm working with ILM next year.
Okay,
on that system, on a show. I can't say the name of the show.
Oh my God!
But I've already been booked starting in March or April 2022 for a big book adaptation using the ILM system.
Oh, okay. Is that? Can you say that it's known, or are they going with something that nobody knows?
I don't even know how to answer that question. I think that once it comes out, it'll be known, but it's not Star Wars or anything like that.
No, I didn't know. But like, you know, when they took the the Twilight series and how that was a known, is this a known book to people? Is this another Harry Potter?
Yeah, it'll be known when it comes out. It's known.
Okay, great. Well, that system that they used, there was a mini documentary about it with Favreau, and I was like, this is game changing. This lets actors feel like they're in a world instead of using the green screen boxes mixed in with a little bit of dirt. So like the level of depth that you can create in your storytelling now just extrapolates, because it's like, what do you want? What do you want on the wall? And I wonder, can that same idea, the James Cameron Maverick thinking of filmmaking, the Steven Spielberg game-changing ideas, right? Like, is that something that that weapons can take? Because I mean, I don't. If you really love film, then you love not putting actors in the way of harm. So really, if you can do it in post, do it in post.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to go that way. I think that, you know, the hardcore sort of weapons authenticity people will hang on as long as they can. But, you know, we know that what just happened, we have to do everything we can in our power moving forward to ensure it never happens again. And if it means CGI, it means CGI. I'm all for whatever keeps everybody safe and sends them home at the end of the day. And sorry about this dinging that's going on. I haven't figured out how to get rid of it.
I don't care. We're low budget. We're indie. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Look at that. You know what that is? That's mine's been dinging too, but that's the coffee cup in Game of Thrones.
Okay, perfect. Okay. The coffee cup.
How did you I wanted to ask you kind of about that. Like the spoofs that happen, everybody's human, shit goes down, give somebody a fucking break, but like those kinds of things, like do you guys have checks and balances there for like clear the set of any new age technology people?
Oh yeah, no, it's like, hey, that really nice wristwatch you're wearing? Yeah, it's 1880. So yes, absolutely. It's like you're always watching, and especially if you're on a historical show, it's like, you're just watching. But yeah, and mistakes happen, things happen. But in digital, I'm thinking to myself, well, the budget on Game of Thrones, surely they could have erased that.
Right? Yeah.
It's like
they just missed it, and that's the thing. Like, and for such a triumphant display of what TV can do, because Game of Thrones was like, okay, if we're going to show people what 10 million an episode does for TV.
Game of Thrones basically, correct me if I'm wrong, it just opened the door up to this peak television where, I think on C we had a $15 million budget per hour.
Wow.
It was crazy the money we had.
Wow.
And so you just kind of go, they're just throwing it out there, and there's a great responsibility when you're managing shows of that scope. I think my prop department on C was 26 people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So it was, you just kind of, it's just amazing.
Dean, I would love to talk to you more about this, and thank you so much for the time that you've given us. Is there anything that people can check out that you can talk about that you've recently done? Something that you want to let the people know to see?
God, well, I did a movie called The Unforgivable with Sandra Bullock that's coming out in December.
Nice.
It was an interesting movie because we started it, and halfway through we shut down for the pandemic, and then came back 5 months later and picked up the next day, which was weird. I have to say, one day you're filming, the next day you show up and you're wearing N95 and goggles, and so that came out. I'm gonna say the code title of a film I've done.
Okay.
And then you can look it up on the internet.
Okay. Yeah.
You'll get the real name.
Yeah.
I just finished a movie with director David Lowry. And David Lowry, for those of you who might not know him, did The Green Knight.
Yes.
And he, he's just a wonderful filmmaker. He's so talented, and he's such a great man. And we took a Disney classic under the code name Bonfire and reimagined it. And I worked on it for 10 months with him, that had us filming in Vancouver and then Newfoundland. And the crew were so enamored with the project and working with him after 10 months that when the film wrapped, it was almost like we didn't want to go home. And none of us wanted to take department head jobs right away, because the experience was so magical that we all decided we just wanted to savor it. And so I still haven't department headed anything since that movie wrapped in August. I'm helping a friend on another movie that I can't say the title of, but I think that one with Jude Law's in it,
really,
and Jim Gaffigan, and it's just a really great adaptation of a Disney classic in a family film under the codename Bonfire.
All right, I'll be searching for it for sure. I would love it if you could send me some of your bio information so we can let the world know what you've done and how to experience all of the magic you've created for me and everybody who loves your work. Dean, thank you so much for saying yes on such short notice. It was such a pleasure to get to know you, man.
Well, it was an easy conversation. You set the tone. I can't believe the time has just flown by. We've been talking for 2 hours. So,
yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it, other than I have to pee. So,
all right. Well, I will get you out of
little
here.
honesty there.
Perfect. No, you have a seat at the table here at the Real Debaters Studio anytime, my friend.
Okay.
So,
let me know when it's up to listen, and I'll give it a go.
For sure. You have a great rest of your day, and I will let you go. Have a good one, bud.
Okay. Take care, man. Good talking to you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.